what's the nature of this moment that we're in this country? Is the country in a crisis?
Yeah.
What is the crisis?
I'm not saying it as eloquently as I've heard you say it. Steve's also been a guest on the podcast. Look, if you start to break it down, you can convince yourself that any particular thing is sort of not so bad, right? So what I say when I want to be optimistic and give people hope, but not too much hope, is that if you look at the institutions of democracy, a lot of them are holding up pretty well. So for example, the press. So what you have is you have the disparagement of the press. You have a president saying the press is the enemy of the people. That's terrible, and he calls out particular people by name, and there's a suggestion that violence against members of the press are all right, and there's a subversion of what is true and what is not true, so people, like you might expect in the prior Soviet Union, and to some extent in Russia, you just sort of destroy what truth is, and you make people uncertain about what they can trust and what they can't trust. All that's bad. But when the president says things about changing the libel laws, you can't do that. It's not going to happen. When he says things about taking the licenses away from newspapers or from radio stations or TV stations, I really don't believe that we're not on the precipice of that. He can't do that. That's rhetoric. So, and on the other side of the token, based on the work that you and others do, the press is very vibrant and is doing scoop after scoop after scoop and is discovering a lot of things that prosecutors haven't been able to discover and ferreting out all sorts of corruption. So the press it's attacked and it's under siege, and it's maybe more under siege by the economic model of being in the print world than other things, but I think it's okay. The courts, yeah, they're being attacked. He attacks people by name, but there's something to be said for the structure of the Constitution that these folks a few hundred years ago thought of, which is you get life tenure. And there's an argument to be made that life tenure is bad because people stay on the bench too long. But the fact that you have life tenure was intended to insulate the court and members of the bench and in the federal system from this kind of thing. So if you're a judge and you get on the wrong side, as I like to say, if you're a judge, you get on the wrong side of the President of the United States, he calls you out on Twitter. If you're a U.S. attorney who gets on the wrong side, then you get a podcast. So there's a because U.S. attorneys didn't have life tenure. And then Congress is a mixed bag depending on what's going on. Where I think the threat is, from my perspective, my parochial thing that I care about being in law enforcement, is the independence of the law enforcement function. The independence of the FBI, the independence of the United States attorneys, the independence of people who pursue civil rights investigations and all sorts of other things, and a lack of faith and trust that those folks are doing their jobs in the way that we have been trained to do them. Because there's actually not a law unless you can, put together a strong enough case. It's very difficult to do, although some people think it's been made and want it to be made, of obstruction against a president. And all these things that we thought, to go back to your original question, Gary Kasparov, who also has been a guest on the show, I think in some ways put it best, and I think other people have said the same thing. A lot of what we expect and what happens on the part of a president and our elected leaders is done on the honor system. A president has never been required to be transparent about his taxes and about his income. There are issues that the president is sort of above, and if an ordinary person in government did those things, they'd be fired. The president can tweet in a way that you didn't expect someone to be able to tweet. And so, to me, I think the concern is that you've got a president who's violating all these norms, and a question that needs to be asked is which of those things do we need to do something about going forward into the future to make into a hard law?